Hello everyone, thank you for watching this video. John here again. This is my second video I'm making for Mr. Randall Van Oosteen. Mr. Randall, you quoted Philippians 2:6 through 11, and you said that it was likely an ancient Christian worship hymn that Paul inserted in the text to remind the Philippians of their beliefs about Jesus. It clearly asserts his pre-existence and full divinity. Well, first I want to say that I'm surprised that you are stating verses 6 through 11. Most Trinitarians stop at verse 8. Well, the 6, 7, and 8 is what they focus on because 9, 10, 11 refutes the idea that Jesus is God. But what I want you to do is this. Reread Philippians 2. Just prior to verses 6 through 11, Paul says, have this mindset in you. So unless you believe, okay, that Paul wants you to have the mindset that you pre-existed and that you're God, then obviously that's not what he's saying in 6, 7, and 8, that Jesus pre-existed and have God. Otherwise, like I said, you absolutely have to believe that that's what Paul's trying to tell you is have that mindset. You pre-existed and you're God. And yet what we find is, if you really understand what Philippians 2 is speaking about, it's a comparison between the first Adam and Jesus. When you look at Adam, he was in the image of God, just like it says in verse 6 about Jesus. Morphe, that's the word used. It means image. It doesn't mean form. It doesn't mean he is. It means he's in the image of God, just like Adam and just like us. We are also in the image of God, except for we're sinful. The first Adam was not sinful until he sinned, and Jesus was not sinful. But yet the first Adam sought equality with God. That's exactly what he did when he took of the fruit. The lie from Satan was is that you're going to be like God, equal to God. So therefore, the first Adam did seek equality. The second Adam, Jesus, did not. Even though he was in the image of God, he did not uh, grasp for equality with God. It would make no sense to say that Jesus is God and he didn't see it as equality something to be grasped for. That would make no sense at all. If he is God, he doesn't need to grasp for equality. He has equality innately, right? So, therefore, again, we cannot sit there and put our common sense to the side. We need to maintain our common sense whenever we're reading Scripture. Clearly, that if you look at Philippians 2, what we have here is a comparison between the first Adam and Jesus. That's what we have a comparison of. And what Jesus did was he didn't grasp for equality. What he did exactly. He became a servant. What does the Old Testament say about the Messiah? He's my servant, is what God said. He Jesus became a servant, and he did exactly what God wanted. And it says, that's why I said I'm surprised you go on to verses 9, 10, and 11, because it says that because of Jesus' obedience, even up to the death, he was highly exalted by God. Now, that makes absolutely no sense if Jesus was God, for two reasons. One, it's saying that God was obedient to God and therefore God exalted him. That's the first absurdity that it would mean. And the second thing is that if Jesus is God, he's up here and he comes down and he does this wonderful sacrifice and then he's exalted to just underneath God. Remember, Jesus is second in command, and it makes it clear. Even Paul says it's clearly understood that when we say all things are subjected to him, we don't mean God. God is still above him, right? So Jesus is second in command. He goes from being God, first command, comes down, now he's second in command for eternity. It says that he's going to turn everything over to God so that God may be all in all, and Jesus will live in eternity as our brother. So therefore, in eternity, he will be second in command, right? Now, that's not an exaltation. That is a demotion. Let's bring our common sense back into this. If you go from here to here, that's a demotion. However, Jesus was born under the angels. And only after, according to Scripture, only after his resurrection was he now placed right here above the angels under God. That is an exaltation, and that alone. Your version is the demotion. Scripture's version is talking about exactly what it says, that Jesus was exalted. So, no, please reread Philippians 2 and go to God first and ask for God to please reveal this truth to you. And like I said, it's just you got to read it. I have another video on Philippians 2. I'll refer you to. Read that. I can go a little bit more in depth, but let's go on to your second comment about Romans chapter 8. You say that this passage from Paul makes it evident that all things that have been created are subject to bondage and decay. This would include Jesus if he is merely human. Either one is part of the created order or one is the creator. If Jesus was merely human, then he was a created being and subject to bondage and decay, therefore in the need of redemption himself. He could not be our salvation. Now, first of all, I'd point out that where does it say that in Scripture? Where does it say what you said as far as that if he was part of the creation, he couldn't be our redemption? It doesn't say that anywhere. It says that he has to be a lamb without blemish. That means sinless. Well, he was sinless. He was born into this corrupt world. No doubt he was born into a corruptible body. He was like us. He bled like us, right? He was split open on the cross. He was nailed through on the cross. He sweated blood and cried out to God in the garden, saying, if there's any other way. But ultimately, he put his faith and trust in God and said, okay, if it has to be this way, your will, not mine. And he accepted what his role in the mission was going to be the Messiah. But that is not, does it say anywhere in Scripture? It does not say that if he's part of the creation, that he needed redemption and he can't be our salvation. It doesn't say that. That's what you're saying. Scripture said he had to be a lamb without blemish, which he was. God said he was going to be a man among the people. That's what he was. God can't die. Jesus can. God did not sin, man sinned. So it would make sense that man would also have to atone for this sin. Now, when it talks about creation, it's talking about all of creation, not just humans. All of creation will suffer decay in this present state. So, again, I want you to rethink what your understanding is because you're trying to force Jesus being God and the Trinity into these scriptures. And you don't have to. If you just let Scripture tell you what Scripture says. If you don't understand this Scripture, look back and see what Scripture before it says about that same subject. I just don't understand why Trinitarians fight it so hard. I don't know if it's sin in your life. I don't know if it's pride, which is also a sin, that you can't get over yourself and just admit that you bought a lie. But that's what we need to do. We need to humble ourselves. That's the meaning of Philippians 2, 6 through 8, right there. Humble yourself and realize that you could have bought a lie. Be humble. Go to God and ask for the truth to be revealed to you. And I believe, like I said, if you go there earnestly of a pure heart, I believe that you can have, this knowledge. You can accept it at least. But you don't have to fight it so hard when clearly that's what Scripture's saying. You're trying to make Scripture say something instead of just letting Scripture tell you what it's saying. But again, think about those things that I told you. And I do pray that you come to the truth.